Chapter 28, Chapter 26, The Land of Peace. Chapter 26, The Land of Peace. The northern border of the land of Carmen was, conveniently enough, located on the meteorological anomaly known as Fog Valley. From the south side, a pair of sheer cliffs loomed straight up on both sides, nearly perfect right angles at their point of termination, stretching off towards the coastlines. The narrow pass between them constantly leaked the drifting white fog that filled the valley, even on a beautiful sunny day, out into the air, though it was sure to dissipate before long. Due to the acoustics at the tight end of the valley, sound often carried through as well, especially when travelers approached.
Fog, fog, fog. Oh, this is Fog Valley's song. Can I kick him? Please, can I kick him? Actually, you know what, I'm going to kick him anyways. Glad I stifled the urge to join in. Behave, children. We're almost there. How can you tell? When I find whoever created this place while I was out, I'm gonna... Hoops, there's another ogre. I got him. You know, it's really creepy when you talk about geography like that. Good shot. Rand's right, I can feel the air changing. Can you really? I honestly can't tell the difference. Fascinating. Me either, but I can see it up ahead. About time.
Squinting in the suddenly increased light, Ryu emerged from the valley, and gazed over the countryside before him as the rest of the group followed him out. Carmen was the natural home of the farm clan, and it showed, south of the equator, it was well in the grip of what was more analogous to spring than fall, and the land was lush and full of life. Gently rolling hills stretched off towards the horizon, covered in fields of corn and wheat and vegetables, with farmhouses scattered here and there to watch over them.
Hey,
Bao commented.
This is new. It looks nice,
Nina said, smiling slightly.
Peaceful. Yeah.
Kat shook her head slowly.
Man, why couldn't I have grown up around here, hey? Carmen alone is responsible for nearly a third of the world's food supply,
Spar told them, gazing over the fields with a blank face, as usual.
It boasts the most bountiful, if unremarkable, environment on the planet. Ironic, considering it borders the wasteland of Skanda, which is more or less the exact opposite. Still, Carmen remains unaffected, and hopefully always will. The wandering tribes of the Ogre clan are the only real source of strife. Apart from them, both the farm clan and the humans dwelling here remain in a state of more or less constant peace and tranquility. That pretty much covers it,
Rand agreed.
Lots of food, lots of plants, lots of peace and tranquility, and about as exciting as watching paint dry. Even the capital's a backwater. They just call it the capital because it's the biggest town in the country, you know? It's not even close to a city. Hell, it barely even qualifies as a town. Sounds encouraging,
Sten drawled.
We had better make it our first stop anyways,
Ryu grunted.
Scouring the countryside for any traces of what we're looking for would be a blast, I'm sure, but I'd kind of prefer it if we could find word of it an easier way, and the capital's the best place to start for that. A couple days south of here.
Rand shrugged.
All we gotta do is follow the road. I'm just saying, don't expect too much.
The big man was fidgeting slightly, and carefully looking away when he spoke, although his face was blank.
Sounds like you know the place pretty well,
Kat said cautiously.
You could say that.
He nodded slowly.
Any chance of an inn to stay at on the way, or perhaps two?
Jean asked hopefully.
A tavern, maybe. Not likely,
Rand told him bluntly.
Most of the villages are off the road. We'd be losing time if we tried to find one every night. How are the monsters?
Dees raised an eyebrow.
Last time I was through this part of the world, they weren't fun. They're not, but they shouldn't be a problem,
Rand explained.
The road and all the farms are warded against them. Another reason not to go off exploring unless we need to. If it does come to that, mostly carnivorous plants and bugs, and an occasional metal golem or clay idol. Ugh. Well, we're not gonna get anywhere standing around here talking all day,
Ryu told them.
The sooner we get there, the better, even if it turns out to be a waste of our time. Only one way to find out if it will be or not. Let's get moving.
The next 2 days were surprisingly uneventful, especially by their standards. Ryu was used to even the kind of day that involved nothing but walking being broken up by occasional monster attacks, but Rand's word was true, and the only ones who encountered any were Bao and Kat, when they went off-road to look for dinner. They, along with the others, seemed as discomfited by the flat monotony as Ryu was. By the third day, everybody was on edge, and he figured it was only a matter of time before somebody actually suggested going to look for trouble. Fortunately, before it came to that, they finally saw Farmtown on the horizon.
Anything we should know about this place?
Ryu said as they approached.
Yeah.
Ran sighed heavily.
A lot, actually. I've been trying to figure out the right way to talk about it for a few days now.
Everybody else exchanged a glance.
Go on,
Sten said after a moment.
We're not gonna need to get rooms at the inn,
Rand explained quietly.
Or maybe it'd be better to say we wouldn't be able to. I kind of know somebody here, and if we stayed anywhere but her house, she'd hear about it. And nobody in this town is gonna cross her, no matter how much we'd pay them. One of those.
Bao guessed, wincing.
She invented those,
Rand said, shaking his head.
Even the governor doesn't do anything that'd piss her off, on account of how she's one of the wealthiest landowners in the country. She owns about half the fields we're looking at right now. Good news is, if there's anything going on in this country, she'll know about that, too. Actually getting her to tell us about it will be another story, of course. Of course,
Sten echoed quietly.
I will use my charm to persuade her,
Jean suggested.
Even the most. No, don't do that.
Rand interrupted, eyes widening.
The last guy who tried that on her had to get both arms reattached. Does anybody else have a slowly growing feeling of impending doom?
Nina asked, raising an eyebrow, and most of the others nodded.
It's not that bad,
Rand assured her, then paused.
Well, it won't be for you guys, anyways. I'll get the worst of it. Just let me handle it, and you'll be fine. That's not the way we do things, man,
Ryu told him quietly.
We're not going to just leave you in the firing line like that. It is this time,
Rand replied, staring him down.
You want my advice on how to handle the situation here, on account of me knowing the area? That's what it is. Don't get involved. Let me do the talking, and the dealing with what happens. It's nothing I'm not used to, and it'll make things a lot easier, for all of us. I think you should listen to him, boss,
Sten said, no hint of humor or sarcasm in his voice.
It's personal, isn't it? Yeah.
Rand nodded.
It is. All right,
Ryu agreed reluctantly.
We'll follow your lead. Just as long as it doesn't get out of hand. Yeah.
Kat's eyes narrowed.
I'll keep my temper under control, but if something too outline happens, we're gonna have problems. Ditto,
Dee said, scowling.
Just try, okay?
Rand pleaded, then paused, looking down.
About that. There's one more thing. I've kinda got a request to make. Do you think, maybe, we could kind of, you know, not tell people just what it is we do for a living? Would that not make it a bit strange, to be asking about such things as demonic activity, and those who seek to fight against it?
Spar pointed out.
I'll figure something out,
Rand told it.
The person we're going to go see. I don't think she'd approve, if she knew what I was doing. Please. It's your hometown,
Ryu said, shrugging.
We'll play this one however you want. There's a Rangers Guild office here, right?
Bao recalled.
An elder from your clan was at that meeting. If you tell whoever this is that me and Ryu are ex-rangers who got recalled for one last big job, the elder'll go along with that. Good idea.
Rand smiled, though there was little warmth in it.
Thanks, guys.
Further discussion was cut off then, as they approached the town limits. A simple wooden gate was set up there, if you could even call it that, as it was really little more than 2 posts with a third tied across the top. A farm clansman in the same kind of toga Rand habitually wore under his armor was walking out. Though his was orange, he was actually taller and even more muscular than the white mage. Seeing them, he frowned for a moment until his eyes fell on his fellow clansman and widened.
Rand,
he said, sounding stunned, as he dropped the gigantic bale of hay he had been carrying over one shoulder. It was larger than Kat was.
Is that you? Hey, Jim,
Rand replied, stepping up to the front of the group.
It's been a while. You're looking well. What are you doing back here, man?
The farm clansman grinned, walking over and shaking his hand firmly.
Everybody said you had gone to some big city somewhere to get work there after you left. Oh, I did.
Rand nodded.
Things got a little complicated after that, is all. I guess you could say we're sort of here on business. Business, hey.
Jim looked the rest of the team over again.
You guys friends of Rand's? Of course we are.
Cat punched Rand in the arm, grinning.
Somebody's gotta look out for this big lug, you know. Well, that's awfully nice of you, little lady.
Jim chuckled.
Guess you've got a point there.
Sobering, he turned back to Rand.
Daisy wasn't too happy with you for taking off like that, you know. Nobody else in this town could blame you, but... I know.
Rand sighed.
We're going to go see her. I'm ready for whatever happens. I probably deserve it. Be careful, man,
Jim warned him.
You might want to just camp out outside of town for today and wait until tomorrow to go see her. Another guy from the Church of St. Eva stopped by to see her today. They actually sent in a paladin this time. Won't make much difference, to Daisy.
Rand shook his head.
Won't improve her temper, either, though. Thanks for the warning, but we need to get this done with as soon as possible. We'll wait until she's done with him, at least. Better you than me, in that case.
Jim picked the bale of hay back up.
I'm gonna head out to the barn, then. Maybe if I'm lucky, I'll even manage to get out of earshot. See you tonight, if you're still alive.
Shouldering the bale, he set off down the road.
What was up with that?
Bao asked as they walked on, through the gate.
The part about the Church of St. Eva, I mean. Oh, they keep trying to get permission to build a chapel in Carmen,
Rand explained.
For some reason, they always come to the person we're going to go see. I don't know why, she always throws them out on their ass. Chances are, this paladin will be no exception. For once, I hope it's not Ray, then,
Ryu commented, casually looking around.
That would be a bit difficult to explain.
Farm Town was, as Rand had said, a small, rural community. The streets were unpaved, and it was just as common to see them bordered by pens of cows or pigs as by buildings. There were only 4 of them anyways, forming a crisscross of which the center was occupied by what looked like the town hall, the general store, the inn, and the tavern, the latter 2 clearly connected. The only building larger than the town hall was a huge, ancient-looking farmhouse at the rear of the town, looming watchfully over it atop a hill. This seemed to be their destination. As they walked past, it became clear that Rand was a familiar face in town. Other men, all clad in the same orange togas, hailed him as they labored away, herding pigs or hauling barrels, repairing roofs, or driving wagons. Rand, for his part, simply smiled and waved without stopping to talk, even when he received similar attention from the farm clan's women, the first females of the clan Ryu had ever seen. They were more humanoid than the males, lacking the heavy shells and leathery grey hides of their counterparts. They even had hair, usually curly blonde locks. Despite this, their cloven hooves and the shapes of their faces clearly identified them, as did their unusual size. Each of them was at least 8 feet tall, and while none were quite as muscular as the men, something about their build suggested that the potential was there.
Does anybody else suddenly feel really self-conscious?
Cat muttered.
Or worried about being stepped on? I'm just hoping bar fights aren't common around here,
Sten commented.
The word trampled comes to mind. Be nice,
Dees told them both, though she looked slightly amused herself.
The Builder clan are even worse, so you might want to get used to it if we're going to end up going to Gunswow.
She broke off, eyes widening, as the front door of the farmhouse ahead of them suddenly burst open, right when they were approaching it. A paladin in full plate mail, including his helmet, had come flying through it head first. The group scattered, and he landed in the dirt, skidding a respectable distance before colliding with the wall of the tavern.
And stay out, you worthless rascal!
A woman's voice yelled from inside the house.
If I see you back here again, I'll tan your hide. Miss Daisy, please calm down,
the paladin called, banging his helmet a few times before standing back up.
We only wish to build a church in Carmen. It would be entirely the people's choice whether to attend it or to remain devoted to Namanda. Where is the harm in freedom of choice? And of course, we would pay you lavishly for the land.
Before he could finish the sentence, a chair came flying through the door, and bounced off of his head.
Shut up!
A huge woman in her late middle age roared, stomping out of the door and charging him, a riding crop raised overhead. Unlike the other farm clan's women, she was just as muscular as the men, and instead of a dress, she wore breeches and a sturdy purple blouse. Her hair was red, and bound in a tight bun.
Our people have never needed any other religion but Namanda, and they never will. Why the hell would I sell you land to build a church we don't want? Even if it wasn't disrespectful, it'd still be a waste of good land. Now get out of town, or I'll really give you something to run from. Wait, wait.
The paladin held out his hands, but Daisy's advance was implacable, and as she approached, he turned and ran, shouting over his shoulder.
All right. I can see that now isn't a good time, so I'll come back and discuss this with you once more after you've calmed down. May Saint Eva watch over you. Do it, and I'll nail you to a post and use you for a scarecrow.
Daisy yelled after him. Harumphing, she spun on her heel and turned around, finally noticing the group. She had charged through them without even seeing them in pursuit of the paladin.
And who are you supposed to?
As she surrendered, her voice trailed off, and when she spoke again, it was much quieter, almost normal.
Rand? Is that you? Hi, Mom,
Rand said, just as quietly.
I'm back.
Ryu's jaw dropped.
Mom.
Cat yelped.
Rand.
Daisy said again, just as quiet, and then her eyes narrowed and she stomped towards him. Grabbing the front of his toga in one hand, she whirled, grunted, and actually threw him over her head, through the open door, to skid into the house face first.
Holy shit,
Bao whispered.
What do you mean, I'm back, you idiot?
She roared, advancing on him as he tried to pick himself up.
You run out on me without so much as a goodbye, go wandering around the world like a bum at your age, and then you drift back in here on the north wind like a tumbleweed and the first thing you say is, I'm back, hey. Moron.
Raising her riding crop again, she lashed him across the head.
No excuses. Where were you, and what were you doing, all this time? I.
Rand stammered, and received another hit for his efforts.
I went to the city to look for work, Mom. You know, Corsair? Over in Tentar. That's halfway across the world, you imbecile.
She nailed him again.
Work? Work? If you wanted work, we had all the work you could ever ask for right here, out in the fields. And we still do, so don't think you're going to get a free lunch. I don't know why you're back, and I don't care. As long as you're staying here, you're going to pull your weight, just like everybody else.
Whirling around, she put her hands on her hips and glared at the rest of them, and they all cringed back.
And who are you supposed to be? Mom.
Rand shook his head and stood back up.
They're my friends. Did I ask you?
Turning back on him, she gave him another one with the crop before regarding the group once more.
So, you're my son's shiftless buddies, are you? Probably a bunch of no-good bums, just like him. Well, he might be a useless runaway, but he's still my son, so I'll give you food and board, but only if you're willing to get your hands dirty too. Around here, if you don't work, you don't eat. You would better be ready to get down to it bright and early tomorrow morning. You hear me? Yes, ma'am,
Ryu said, quietly but firmly. It seemed to be the best idea.
Good.
She barked.
You've got more sense than my worthless son, at least. The rest of you should follow this kid's example more. Now, I'm going to go do some paperwork. Dinner's at 6 o'clock. If you're not there on the minute, you're not getting any, and anybody who bothers me before then is going to regret it. Rand, get off your lazy backside and show your transient friends around, already.
She stumped off into the house, and they all heard the sound of a door slamming, hard enough to rattle the windows.
Wow,
Sten said slowly.
Just. Wow. Indeed,
Jean agreed.
Why didn't you say anything?
Kat asked Ryu.
To her, I mean. Why didn't you?
He replied, raising an eyebrow.
I just.
She floundered.
Shut up. Are you all right?
Nina flew over to Rand, looking him over.
She wasn't exactly gentle. Actually, by her standards, that was practically a hug and I missed you,
Rand grunted, shaking his head slowly.
Don't worry, I'm used to it. Not exactly thrilled about it happening again, but used to it. Besides, compared to...
He hesitated, conscious of other nearby townspeople, who were not so subtly listening and watching.
Compared to some of the hits I've taken over the years, this is nothing. Come on, I'll show you around like she said. So, are we actually going to do this?
Dees asked as they all went inside.
Clear that field, I mean. That. Seems to be the case,
Spar murmured, looking confused.
I'm still not entirely sure what just happened here. I'll explain later,
Sten told it.
Anyways, Rand said she's the most likely person to know what's going on in this country. If she's gonna make us work for that information, well, we've all done worse.
Despite its size, the house was mainly empty. It had dozens of rooms, but most of them looked as if they hadn't been used for decades. As Rand explained, Daisy paid some of the local girls to come in and keep it tidy once a week. She had never had much interest in housework herself, preferring to supervise the men who worked out in her fields. The group met them all when they came in for dinner, which Daisy did supervise. They were just as happy to see Rand back as everybody else in town was, and friendly enough to the group as well. Dinner was nourishing, but hardly delicious, though nobody said a word about that. Daisy kept her ladle with her at all times, and nobody needed to ask what she would use it for if given the slightest provocation. Once they had eaten, Daisy showed them to their rooms and strictly informed them that the men and the women would be sleeping in different hallways. Spar was with the women, and that she knew every floorboard in the house, which nobody doubted. After the door had been shut, Ryu went to sleep, idly realizing that they hadn't even told her about what they were doing here yet. Power. We need yet more of your power. God needs more of your power. Give your soul to God. Pray to God. Praise God. Sacrifice your heart and mind to God. You will become God's power. In the morning, a rooster's crow awakened them all, and they trudged downstairs for breakfast, some of them more groggy than others. Like dinner, the food was hearty if not exactly delicious, and there was plenty of it. The coffee was particularly noteworthy, as it looked to have the consistency of roofing tar but was liquid to the sip, if strong enough that it should have burned a hole through their mugs. Once everybody had eaten, Daisy took them all out to the field she had mentioned the day before, explaining that the previous owner had let it fall into neglect before her purchase. This became apparent when they arrived. The field was several square miles, and it was full of overgrown weeds, newly cut tree stumps and large rocks, all of which looked as if they'd be more than slightly problematic to remove.
Old Man Rumpole let the place go to hell, but it's still good land,
Daisy told them, looking it over critically.
Just needs some work, is all. We'll have it growing corn again, or maybe potatoes, by this time next year. So long as you get it cleared, that is.
She looked them over steadily.
9 of you should have it done by tonight if you don't slack off, so that's what I'll be expecting. Disappoint me, and you won't eat. We know, Mom,
Rand told her, glancing down at his feet.
We can handle it. Then why are you talking instead of working?
She hit him with the riding crop.
Get moving.
She turned to walk away, then paused.
One more thing. A couple of you have a sort of magical look about you. If that's the case, don't even think about it. Namanda doesn't approve of using celestial powers for worldly deeds, and that includes farming. You get it done by hard work, and nothing more. If the stumps and rocks are too much for you, pull weeds.
Spar raised a hand, looking apologetic.
Miss Daisy, I hate to say this, but I'd rather avoid killing other plant life myself. Why, you...
She started to raise the riding crop, then paused, taking in the grassman's frail build. After a moment, she lowered it.
Grassman, hey? All right, I can understand that. Breath of nature, right? Indeed.
Spar nodded.
I know they are not truly sentient, or even close to it, so it is not murder. But it sounds like it is. I will be able to bear it from others' hands, but my own. I gotcha, kid.
She nodded firmly.
All right, I've been meaning to inspect the fence around here soon anyways. See what parts are gonna need repairing. Think you can handle that while the rest of them clear the field? Gladly.
It nodded.
I will be most meticulous. Good.
She glared at the rest of them.
Okay, 8 instead of 9. Still ought to be more than enough to finish up here. So what are you waiting for, hey? Get to work.
Without waiting for a response, she stomped off.
So we're farmers now?
Bao asked grumpily once she was out of earshot.
Is that it, then? Super. How do you think I feel about it?
Rand growled at him.
I wasted 20 years of my life on this crap before getting fed up with it and heading off with nothing but the clothes on my back and the zenny in my pocket. Coming back to this was the last thing I ever wanted to do.
Turning towards a rock the size of his head, he angrily kicked it.
She's got one point, though,
Ryu said reluctantly.
The sooner we get to work, the sooner we get done. Spar, you're exempt, like she said. Nina, Dees, take care of the weeds. Sten, Bao, Jean, see what you can do about those rocks. Me, Kat and Rand will take the stumps.
Muttering and grumbling, they all got down to work, pulling weeds, removing rocks and breaking up stumps. It was surprisingly difficult, considering how skilled they'd become at other, more violent physical activities. Ryu was somewhat startled by how long it took him to destroy a simple chunk of half-buried wood.
Look, I'm sorry about this,
Rand said after a while.
I know you guys shouldn't have to put up with this. She's just always been like this, after my dad died. I barely even remember what she was like before that, but I know that when he did, she changed. People kept pressuring her to sell all the farms, said it was a man's job, running them. I guess she decided she'd show them a thing or two. Don't know why she started being so rough with me, but...
He shrugged.
It's fine,
Sten told him, and the others all murmured in agreement.
We can deal with it. Thanks, guys.
Rand replied gratefully.
I think she's just trying to see what kind of people you are. If we do what she says and make her happy, she'll help us out. Hey, Rand.
Kat asked after a moment, not looking away from the stump she was shattering with her fists and feet.
Why did you not want us to tell anybody around here what we did for a living? I didn't want to ask, but I've been trying to figure it out ever since you asked, and I'm coming up with nothing. It's...
Rand started to say, staring at his own stump, then continued to pound away at it.
It's kind of complicated. We're mercenaries, right? That means... a lot of the time, we kill people. For money. Yeah, maybe they've mostly been demons so far, but not always, and they're not always going to be. I just... don't want my mom to find out about that. That's what I'm doing these days. Her, or any of the other guys here. I don't think they'd like it.
Nobody said anything for a while after that, continuing to work in silence as they all thought that over.
I theorized that it would be something like that,
Spar said eventually, continuing its inspection of the fence.
That is why I told your mother I would be uncomfortable with killing other plants, in order to allay any suspicions she might have had along those lines. In reality, my kind hold no moral or emotional stigma towards death, it is a part of life, one I have never held qualms about. However, I thought if I seemed reluctant...
It shrugged.
That was actually pretty sophisticated for you,
Sten told it after a moment.
Not bad at all.
Hefting a rock up to his waist, he started towards the fence, staring off into the distance.
I wouldn't have thought of that myself. I was a soldier, you know? Killing. I got used to it early. Probably earlier than I should have. Never really occurred to me that not everybody on the team would be as desensitized to it as me.
He glanced over at Rand.
You weren't too happy about killing that one guard in Sima, now that I think about it. Or the ones in Trout's Manor. Yeah.
Rand sighed.
Demons are one thing, but ordinary guys. Don't get me wrong, I can deal with it. I knew it was gonna be in the cards when I signed on, and I figured I could handle it, and I can. I just don't like it, I guess. You don't like the thought of life being cheap,
Dee said, meeting his eyes.
You respect it too much for that. Probably because of growing up here. That's where your natural talent for white magic comes from. At heart, you're a healer, not a killer. You prefer to help life flourish. Hey.
Rand frowned thoughtfully.
Yeah, I guess so. Never really thought about it that way, but that does make sense. The white magic, I mean. Kinda wondered about that. Sounds about right to me,
Ryu agreed. He glanced at Bao, who nodded, before continuing.
Me and Bao. We made our first kills at the same time. We were 8. Some shitheads who tried mugging us, over in Capitan. It was us or them, and we could tell they weren't going to stop, I think they were on drugs or something. I had a knife, and Bao had his first crossbow, and... well, we did what we had to. Then we puked our guts out. Of course, that was when a couple guardsmen found us,
Bao added, grunting as he pulled up a rock.
You would not believe how much shit it took to get us out of that mess.
Most of the others chuckled at that, though it sounded forced.
After that, though. After the first time, it got easier. By the time we made it to Corsair, we didn't even care anymore. We knew we should have, we still remembered back when we did, but... we just didn't. Not anymore. Mine was a lot like that,
Kat said, voice unusually calm.
Some total shit came after me behind a pub after I left. Don't even remember how old I was. 8? 10? 12? I don't know. Old enough for him, I guess, or maybe he just liked kids. Either way, as soon as I figured out what he was planning, I snapped. Just kept hitting him, until his skull was gone. I remember thinking that I didn't need to, that he'd have stopped after the first couple hits, but I kept going, all the same. I think I threw up afterward? Maybe. Not sure about that, either. Does it make me stupid if I didn't think you were, when we first met?
Rand asked her.
A killer, I mean. You're asking me if something makes you stupid.
Kat smiled cheerfully at him, already looking brighter.
Nah, it's fine. I try not to let it show, you know? It's just who I am. I got used to it way back then, and it doesn't seem like such a big deal to me, these days. Was August the first time for you, then? Nope.
Rand shook his head slowly.
It was before I met you, but not long. I was in Capitan, looking for work down at the docks, and then one night I was in AA pub when a fight got out of hand. I just meant to put the guy down, but I hit him too hard, I guess. Got out of town in a hurry, and decided to head over to Corsair instead. Felt like shit for the rest of the month.
He sighed.
Maybe it's a good thing that August was the next time. I figured he didn't count, so I guess it kind of helped me get used to the concept. My first was one of the jokers,
Nina told them next, eyes remaining on the clump of weeds she was pulling. Her pale, delicate hands were covered in dirt, but she didn't seem to care.
Ryu and Kat were there. I'd always wondered if I'd be able to do it, when the time came, for a long time. When I did, though, I didn't even hesitate, and I didn't care, afterward. I knew that I should have, but I didn't. I eventually decided that I was more emotionally detached than I had thought. Sounds about right.
Dees shook her head.
You're the opposite of Rand. Whenever you stopped caring about that. And a lot of other things, too, I'm guessing. You probably developed a natural aptitude for black magic. I was 15, when I killed my first man,
Jean said, sounding unusually somber.
An arrogant nobleman of my own age insulted my sister so despicably before the entire court that I had no choice but to challenge him to a duel. I won, and killed him honorably, but still I felt ill for quite some time.
He sighed.
I must confess, I have not given this matter much thought. As of yet, those we have killed have been scoundrels and villains. Should that not be the case, one day, I do not know what I will do. It won't be,
Ryu told him firmly.
Nero knows us all better than that. We might be freelance adventurers, but we're ones with standards. Maybe most of us are killers, but we're not going to just cut down anybody just because somebody pays us for it. If we're going to kill somebody for money, it's going to be the kind of person we'd be inclined to take care of anyways. Anything else, we'll turn down, no matter how much it pays. Maybe that's not much of a distinction, but it still matters to me, and I'm going to hold on to it. It's enough.
Rand smiled slightly, pulling a taproot from the earth with a grunt.
I think we can all work with that.
He glanced at Dees.
How about you? When was your first? You really don't want to know.
She paused in her work for a moment to look back at him, and everybody shivered. Her eyes had changed in some strange, imperceptible way that made it suddenly apparent just how ancient she really was, despite her appearance.
Not unless you want to hear about the time, before recorded history. When gods walked the earth in the guises of men, and what you call lost technology flourished. Where it all began. All of it. Before it shattered like glass, and sentient life scraped itself back together out of the fragments that were left. I think we can do without that, yeah?
Ryu said after a long pause.
Definitely,
Bao agreed, bending over to tug at a strange, conical red rock.
Hey. This one's weird. And it ain't budging, either. Come on, you. Whoa.
He fell back on his ass as the earth started to shake, and with a roar, the rock rose out of the ground. It was the point atop the head of a rough clay idol, rounded on the bottom with craggy features vaguely similar to a human face on its front. Wriggling free of the dirt, it raised itself upright and loomed over them.
Oh, one of these things.
Rand cracked his knuckles.
I hate these things. A local pest.
Spar guessed, looking over.
Yeah, they bury themselves in fields like this and ambush farmers,
Rand explained, as they surrounded the idol and started to advance.
Pain in the ass. Well then, we should discourage that, shouldn't we?
Dee smirked, then dropped it, snapping her fingers.
Damn, I forgot. No magic. It's fine,
Ryu told her, dusting his hands off.
We've got this. Demonstrate.
Cat grinned fearfully.
I was just thinking, I could really use some stress relief right about now. Perfect timing.
The look on the idol's face turned slightly doubtful, as if it was thinking that something wasn't quite going according to plan. Once they'd pulverized it, they went back to their work, no other distractions came up, violent or otherwise, and they simply resigned themselves to getting the job down. Around noon, Daisy came by to look over how they were doing, harumphed, and walked off. When she returned, she had a platter of sandwiches, a kettle full of soup and a pitcher of lemonade, all of which she deposited on the ground along with the dishes for eating before leaving without another word. Everybody ate eagerly. It was tiring work, but somehow not as odious as it had seemed early in the morning. By the time sunset started to creep onwards, they were done. The field had been scoured of weeds, stumps and rocks alike, and was nothing more than freshly turned dirt. Spar had finished its inspection of the fence as well, and so they returned to the farmhouse, where Daisy stood on the back porch, awaiting them with arms crossed.
Well?
She asked.
We cleared the field,
Rand told her.
Every inch of it. I'll see about that tomorrow.
She glanced at Spar.
You looked that fence over real good. I did.
Spar nodded gravely.
Starting from the southeast corner, there is a damaged spot 2 feet 3 inches to the south. The next one is 8 feet 5 inches from there, and then another is 6 feet exactly from that. The next damaged spot is 17 feet 9 inches onwards, and the one after that 7 feet 1 inch.
It continued on in this vein, listing the condition of the entire fence off by memory, for the next 10 minutes. Despite this, Daisy simply took it all in, listening and nodding.
Sounds like you did good,
she admitted grudgingly once it was done.
If the rest of you have the same kind of work ethic as this kid, I'll probably like what I see out there tomorrow. We know what we're doing, Mom,
Rand protested, only to receive a hit from the riding crop.
I'll be the judge of that, you dolt.
She yelled, good mood vanishing instantly.
Just in case, you had better be ready to come out there with me, same time as today. Now come on, get in here and have some dinner.
Turning, she walked inside, and they all followed her, sighing and shrugging. Dinner was much the same as the previous days had been, and once they were done Daisy escorted them all to their rooms once more. Ryu slept like a log, and rose in the morning to the rooster's crow once more, and after breakfast they all trudged out into the field behind Daisy again.
Not bad,
she conceded once they had arrived, looking the field over.
Looks like you got it all. I guess maybe you're not such a bunch of hopeless transients after all. Maybe you could even hold down an honest day's work if you had to.
Suddenly scowling, she advanced on somebody who was standing on the edge of the field, examining it.
Hey! Who are you supposed to be? Oh, hello,
the largest woman any of them had ever seen replied, turning around. Nearly 7 feet tall, she was still dwarfed in that regard by Daisy, but made up for it by being even wider than she was tall. Unfortunately, aside from a great deal of jewelry, she was simply clad in a pleated grass skirt and a pair of coconut shells on a string.
Do you own this land? It's rich, and full of life. Amanda must smile upon it. We all hope so, but never assume,
Daisy replied, her frown fading slightly.
So, you follow Amanda's path, do you? I strive to do so, though I also follow the earth, and all that lives upon it,
the strange woman said, before glancing at Ryu.
Oh, hello. You're the ones, aren't you? The ones my sisters have all been finding. I would have come to find you sooner, but I was up north, at Namanda. Wait, you're...
Ryu started to yell, then paused to get a hold of himself, as the others all drew back.
Okay. You know what? Your granny wants you to go see her, and stay with her for a while. Why don't you? I can do that.
She winked at Rand.
Especially if you stop in some time, hey, big guy.
Before anybody could respond, she shimmered and vanished.
Well,
Daisy said after a long, awkward moment.
What, exactly, was that all about? You really, don't want to know, Mom,
Rand told her, putting a hand to his face.
Trust me on this one. You know what?
She raised an eyebrow.
For once, I think I'll actually believe that.
She crossed her arms then, eyes keen.
Well then, now that that's out of the way, you might as well tell me just what it is that brought you out here, because I already know it wasn't my stupid son getting homesick. You, with the blue hair. You're in charge, right? Let's hear it. We're ex-rangers, Mrs. Marks,
Ryu said calmly.
The guild recalled us for a special case, one that was beyond their normal ability to handle. I'm afraid the details are classified, but Elder Maureen down at the local office will back us up. She was there when we were asked to come back for one last job. That big shindig up north, at that Orion nobleman's summer home, was it?
Daisy guessed.
And this case of yours is here in Carmen. The trail we're following has led us here, yes.
Ryu nodded.
We've been running all over the world after it. I guess you could say we're sort of in the business of taking care of tricky situations. I'm sure you've noticed that we're kind of a varied team. Understatement, kid,
she grunted.
The Highlander's a military man, but not for a while. High-ranking officer, but got there by rising straight from the bottom. The Wing Clan girl and the Creeper boy. You're both old nobility. The Grass Man is a grass man. Enough said there.
She glanced at Dees.
And I can't get any reading at all on you, and that's the first time that's happened in 30 years. I don't like it. I'm unique,
Dees said impishly.
I'll bet.
She shook her head.
I don't know what this is my idiot son is mixed up in, either, and I probably don't want to, but if Maureen backs your story up, I'll buy it. I've known her for long enough to trust her word, and to know when I shouldn't, which doesn't happen often. Details, kid. What do you want from me? Information,
Ryu explained.
We know what we're looking for is south of the Sea of Trees, but that's all. If there's anything you know about something strange going on in Carmen, some source of activity that's suspicious, or a place where there's some unnatural occurrence, we'd appreciate knowing where. Anybody ever tell you you're about as clear as a ball of cotton, kid?
Daisy scowled, thinking. After a moment, she nodded firmly.
All right, here's what we're gonna do. It'll take me a few days to get all the local news. While I'm doing that, you lot can accompany my idiot son on his pilgrimage to Namanda, up north. He hasn't gone on one since before he ran off, so he's due. I know, on account of how I would have heard if he was there when I looked around for him.
She glared at Rand, who lowered his head sheepishly.
Go on up there, and pray for a good harvest, you hear me? Yes, Mom.
Rand nodded.
Come on, guys. Let's go get our stuff.
Turning, he started back towards the house, and they followed him.
Monsieur Rand?
Jean asked, hesitantly, as they headed back.
I must confess, I am slightly confused. Namanda. It is the name of your faith, yes? Your religion. But I have also heard it referred to as other things, including now, when your mother did so as if it were a destination of ours. It's all of the above.
Rand smiled briefly.
It's kind of complicated. Namanda was the name of the founder of the faith, but he wasn't a god, he was simply an enlightened man. It's also the name of the holy place in the northern mountains where he resided in isolation after his enlightenment, and accepted pupils. Monks still go there to study the teachings, removed from the outside world. Most followers aren't exactly required to make pilgrimages every so often, but it's approved of, and
he left it hanging.
And you would feel better if you did, hey?
Ryu guessed.
Alright, I think we can all accept that. Besides, it'll let your mom make her inquiries without anybody connecting that to the strangers who just came in with her son the other day. Is that why she sent us off?
Bao raised an eyebrow.
I was wondering. I guess that makes enough sense. Anyways, sounds like fun to me, so I'm not complaining. Well, more fun than more farm work, anyways. I agree completely, Monsieur Bao,
Jean said, beaming.
It will be an honor and a privilege to see such a place. Should be interesting.
Dees nodded.
Wasn't around last time I was awake, so I have to admit, I'm curious. It's not too far up in the mountains, is it?
Sten asked tentatively.
Not that I'm objecting, but I'm hoping we're not gonna spend all month getting there. We should be there and back within a week,
Rand assured him.
Nah, the only thing we'll have to worry about is the monsters. This is starting to sound better and better,
Kat said with a grin, prompting a sigh from Nina.
What? Nothing.
As Rand had promised, the trip towards Namanda was a lot more like their usual journey. Once they were off the roads, the wards preventing monsters from attacking were no longer present, and they saw enough action to keep Kat satisfied and the rest of them on their toes. Combined with the still pleasant geography, it was a field trip that nobody minded, and they went to sleep around the campfire each evening in a general good mood, even managing to scour up some alcohol from the rural villages they passed through on the way. On their second day out, they reached the mountains, but even the transition to rougher terrain refused to dampen their cheer. The high ground was just as lush and beautiful as the flatlands had been, and even those without much of an eye for beauty had to admit that it was a pleasant sight. Kat, in particular, began engaging in surprisingly complex discussions with Jean on color and angle in relation to the mountain waterfalls and vivid sunsets, much to his delight. After a couple more days following the mountain trail, they reached their destination, a cave set in the side of a mountain peak.
Welcome to Namanda,
one of the two burly monks standing at either side of the cave said, bowing. He was human, tanned and bald, clad in saffron-colored robes with a string of beads around one wrist. The other was a farm clansman, garbed similarly. They both would have looked like professional bruisers in a normal environment, save for the calm peacefulness apparent on their faces.
Have you come to seek enlightenment? We come to offer prayers for next year's harvest,
Rand replied formally.
Enter, then, and be welcome.
The other monk nodded, and Rand led them inside. The cavern was a single, long tunnel, illuminated by bowls of flaming coals set atop waist-high pillars. Ornate stone arches were set every so often, apparently for ceremonial purposes. Rand led the group through them without a word. Rough mats were the only furnishings, and each had a simple wooden bowl atop it. Ryu judged that the mats were used for sleeping, and winced mentally. He was no stranger to roughing it, but even by his standards, the thought of sleeping atop one of those in a cold stone cavern during the winter chilled him. As they continued towards the back, they began seeing more monks. Most of them were either human or farm clansmen, but there was a scattering of other clans as well. Ryu saw a few of both the Creeper and Highlander clans, and even a few ogres. Most surprising of all, though, were the Harpies. Ryu almost got the wrong idea when he saw a pair of human monks fighting them, barehanded, until he realized that none of them were trying to kill, or even seriously wound, and noticed the altered saffron robes worn by the winged women.
Hey!
Rand blinked as they passed by.
That's different. The Harpies, I mean, not the sparring practice. If you think I'm good with my fists, you should see these guys up here really going at it someday. Those ones are just warming up. If the teachings of Namanda have managed to find a way to convince the Harpy clan to listen, that's quite impressive, Nina murmured. As I understand it, the Church of Saint Eva has been trying to convert some flocks for decades without success. You want impressive?
Rand smiled.
Wait until we get further in.
It soon became apparent just what he meant. While the monks towards the front of the cave had been meditating or exercising, those towards the back were engaged in practices Ryu would have described as torture under other circumstances. Some were lying on beds of spikes, others on grills over blazing flames. A few were buried up to their necks in the earth, while more were standing under waterfalls clad only in loincloths. Ryu didn't need to touch the water to guess that it would be icy cold.
I can't quite comprehend the significance of this, Spar noted. Then again, many of the Church of Saint Eva's practices are similarly alien to me, so perhaps I simply do not understand religion. It's physical training,
Rand explained.
The purposes teach endurance and tranquility under all circumstances.
He grimaced.
Personally, you couldn't pay me enough to try that. Actually, the burying thing looks kind of fun,
Jean said cheerfully.
I'll help you try it sometime,
Kat offered.
Behave,
Dees told them both.
Thanks.
Rand nodded to her as they approached the end of the tunnel, where a series of massive metal chimes hung side by side in the largest stone arch of all. Two more monks flanked it, as immobile as statues. Ignoring them, Rand stood before an open wooden box set before it all and closed his eyes, raising one hand before him while leaving the other at his side, and began to chant.
Namanda, Namanda. Namanda, Namanda.
Nobody else spoke a word, or moved. This was important to Rand, and so they waited without complaint as he continued to chant. Ryu soon lost track of time. He didn't know if it was only a few minutes or almost an hour later when the big farm clansman finally opened his eyes again. Lowering his hand, he pulled out his wallet and tossed a handful of zenny into the box before him, then turned back to the group.
Done?
Dees asked.
Yeah.
He nodded.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate this. Ah, young Marks.
An elderly man's voice came from behind them, and they turned to see an ancient human, bald and wrinkled, standing there with a weathered cane in his hand. Despite his cheerful smile, his eyes were bright and penetrating.
It is good to see you again. I had heard that you had left this land. I did, Elder.
Rand bowed his head.
But I have returned briefly, and thought it best to stop by while I was in the area. That was a good thought,
the old man said, nodding.
I am glad that you had it. How is your mother? Still as feisty as ever, Elder,
Rand told him, prompting a chuckle.
She is a strong woman,
the old man said cheerfully.
I am sure she is glad to see that you are doing well. Though she may not show it openly.
He glanced at the rest of the group.
And you have brought friends to us. Have they come to show their devotion to Namanda as well? I'm afraid not, Elder.
Rand coughed.
They follow other faiths, although they still respect Namanda. A pity.
The Elder sighed.
There are some among you who it would have been an interesting experience to have among our number.
He paused before continuing.
In honesty, I must confess this is particularly true of the women. I have been laboring to convince the brothers here to accept the distaff among our numbers for some time, but it is a slow process. As of yet, women may of course follow the faith, but they are not permitted to serve it permanently here at Namanda. I apologize, but I would not make a good believer,
Nina told him honestly.
I have enough trouble placing faith in worldly things as it is, let alone spiritual matters. And I have been devoted to the worship of Laden for more than 1,000 years,
Spar said, nodding slightly.
It would be difficult for me to change my ways at this time. Both understandable.
The Elder nodded back, then glanced at Kat.
And yourself, young lady? Me.
Kat blinked, looking surprised.
I kind of. Well, Saint Eva's already got a claim on me, you know? Besides, I'm nobody special. On the contrary.
The Elder shook his head.
There has only been one of your clan among our number in all my years, and it has been several of them since he departed from this place, along with the daughter of one of our monks. Wait, what?
Kat's eyes widened.
A Warren clansman was here once. Indeed he was.
The Elder nodded.
A reckless lad, but we wish him well regardless. I believe he is living somewhere in the south now.
He glanced towards Dees, who had stepped behind the others as soon as he had walked up.
What of you, young lady? Come now, there's no reason to be shy. What faith is it that you follow? That's a somewhat complicated question to answer, sir,
she said, sighing, and coming around before him. Her voice was oddly solemn, and much more respectful than normal for her.
As I am sure one of your stature can tell. You?
The Elder's eyes bulged, and when he spoke again, his voice had dropped to an odd whisper.
What are you? My name is Dees.
She nodded politely.
Last of the Indigo clan. I am honored to be allowed here. The honor is mine,
the Elder said, nodding back.
Young Rand. I do not know what direction your life has taken since you departed this land, but I think that you have found yourself a place in this world that few could ever dream of. One day, I think, I will ask you to tell me of this. But not today. Today, I believe that you have other matters to attend to, and little time for talking with an old man. I will do that, Elder,
Rand promised.
Thank you. Until that day, then.
The Elder turned and walked away, and once he was gone, the group started back towards the entrance as well. The trip back down the mountains, and then across the flatlands to Farmtown, was just as pleasant as the journey up had been, and nothing was different. Each night, they dined either on game caught by Bao and Cat, or fish that Ryu managed to pull from a stream. The weather remained clear, and the landscape beautiful, and everybody walked back into Farmtown a week from their departure in high spirits. This lasted for approximately 2 minutes, at which point they realized that everybody in town was avoiding them, looking both scared and angry, and there wasn't a whisper of conversation to be heard. Despite the beautiful day, everybody was rushing around, as if trying to spend as little time outside as possible.
Okay then,
Dees muttered.
What is wrong with this picture? Something happened here while we were gone,
Bao growled.
And if these folks are giving us all the fisheye, it's related to us. Mom.
Rand tightened his knuckles and picked up his pace, and when another farm clansman crossed their path, he grabbed him by the shoulder before he could move away, despite the fact that the townsman had him by at least a head's height.
All right, Tom, what happened to my mother? I'm not blind. Tell me. Rand.
Tom grimaced, looking away.
That paladin. He came back. So?
Rand demanded.
Mom could handle him any day. That's what we all thought,
the other man agreed.
But then he said she had converted to the Church of Saint Eva, and agreed to donate the new field of hers to the church so they could build a chapel on it. The paperwork had her signature on it, and he said she had gone to Evray to study their faith further. Rand, she's gone. We haven't been able to find her. We didn't know what to do. Son of a bitch.
Kat yelled, spinning on her heel towards Daisy's house.
When I get my hands on. No,
Rand said flatly, and his voice was so unlike him that she froze on the spot. It was cold and emotionless, but obviously, deliberately so. For the first time since Ryu had met him, he sounded as if he was having difficulty remaining calm and controlled.
Let me handle this, all of you.
It wasn't a request. Before anybody could respond, he turned and charged down the street like a bull, heading towards his mother's house. They all followed in his wake, sharing surprised and angry glances, and the townspeople wisely chose to scatter out of the road as fast as possible. When they reached the house, Rand didn't even go inside, he simply put a hand on the fence to the side and vaulted over it into one of the fields. Most of the others took it with varying degrees of less grace, and by the time they were all over he had gained several more yards on them. Soon, they saw the paladin standing out in the field they had cleared, surveying it. As they approached, he calmly turned to face them.
Is there something I can help you with? Sure, buddy.
Rand growled.
You can tell me just what the hell you're doing on Mrs. Mark's property. Daisy.
The paladin replied calmly.
Inspecting it, of course. She's donated this land to the Church of Saint Eva, so that we may build a chapel on it. Such a generous act is a rare thing even among the faithful, of course, and so she was immediately invited to make a pilgrimage to Evray, an honor reserved only for the most devout. Really?
Rand grunted, deceptively calm.
Is that a fact?
His hand shot out suddenly, slamming down on top of the paladin's helmet, and he lifted him into the air before him.
Wrong answer. I assure you, it is the truth,
the paladin said, just as pleasantly as before.
Oh, hold on a moment. Are you her son? She left a message for you. A message?
Rand blinked, caught off guard momentarily. After thinking about that, he set the paladin back down.
All right, let's see it. It's right here.
Dipping a gauntlet hand into a pack on his back, the paladin pulled out an envelope and handed it over.
I'm sure you'll find that it's all in order. We'll see about that.
Opening it up, Rand pulled out the message inside and began reading it aloud.
Dear Rand, I have wonderful news for you, my son. I have finally witnessed Saint Eva's light, and heard his words. Brother Gabriel has taught me the truth, and convinced me to donate the field formerly belonging to Mr. Rumpole to the church so that they may build a chapel and spread the grace of Saint Eva to our people. I have already signed the land deed over to Brother Gabriel, and they will begin construction within the month. For my generosity, I have been invited to make a pilgrimage to the holy city of Evray immediately, and my newfound love of Saint Eva's teachings that I decided to do so as soon as possible. Already I am embarking on the trip to Bendo, in the south, from where I will depart to Evray. When I return, I will lead the effort to preach Saint Eva's word to our people. I know that you will accept the grace of Saint Eva, just as I have, my beloved son. Help the men of the church in their construction, supervise the workers while I am gone, and prepare for my return. May Saint Eva's light always shine down upon you. Love, Daisy.
Finishing, Rand crumpled the paper in his hand, eyes glinting.
And you expect me to believe this garbage? It is the truth,
Gabriel said, still as calm as ever.
Your mother is now a true believer of Saint Eva. That is unquestionably her handwriting, and so is the signature on the deed. Thus, we are building the church here. How would you know what my mother's handwriting looks like?
Rand growled.
And you expect me to believe she'd write this crap? My beloved son. My mom's never used the word beloved in her life, and there's no way she'd lose faith in Namanda for a shitty religion like yours. What have you done with her? Such a sad thing it is, for a son to doubt his mother's love for him,
Gabriel murmured, his voice taking on a nasty undertone.
It seems she has gone to Evray just in time. Please, stop accusing us of wrongdoings. After all, it's not like you have any proof, is it? You lying scum.
Roaring, Rand smashed him with a right hook that dented his helmet.
All right, that tears it.
Ryu growled as the paladin stumbled back and drew a claymore from his back.
Let's. Easy.
Bao put a hand on his shoulder.
He told us to let him handle this, right? Yeah.
Dees nodded somberly, as Rand hit him again.
This is personal. Family always is. Not our right to step in if he doesn't want us to. An admirable sentiment, but I must confess, I find the logistics of the matchup slightly worrying,
Spar admitted.
Even considering Rand's greater size and ability. It's got a point.
Sten nodded, eyes narrowed.
Bringing fists to a sword fight is a losing proposition, no matter how good you are. You would think so, wouldn't you?
Nina murmured as Rand landed another punch, denting the paladin's breastplate.
And yet, he seems to be winning.
She glanced at Kat, who was watching the fight quietly, her normally bright green eyes curiously dull and her face blank.
I'm surprised you're not the first one to want to get in there. He doesn't need us.
Cat shook her head.
Not for this. Not for just one guy. He can handle this, paladin or no paladin. Have you truly never noticed just how gentle a soul Monsieur Rand is, mon amis?
Jean asked, voice empty of its usual sing-song cadence.
I have long suspected that his preference against weaponry is not due to any inability to learn. Rather, he simply dislikes violence, and prefers to keep his own potential to inflict it to a minimum. Now, however, his peaceful nature has been thrown aside. I do not envy this foolish man who has caused such a thing to happen.
Roaring like an enraged bull, Rand ignored the blows of the sword on his heavy stone armor, and smashed Gabriel with a left hook that sent him flying to the dirt. Stomping after him, he raised a massive cloven foot and stomped down, prompting a gasp of pain and a crack of bone. As he prepared to do so again, the paladin raised one gauntlet hand, and a blocky, hovering head formed of ice appeared in the air before Rand. Opening its mouth, it bathed him in frigid gas before dissipating, leaving Rand encrusted in ice, frozen to the spot.
That does it.
Sten growled.
Let's get.
He broke off as Rand bellowed wordlessly again, shattering the ice with a flex of his muscles as the paladin struggled back to his feet. The big farm clansman's hide was pale and he was shivering in obvious pain, but he didn't seem to care.
So it's magic now, is it?
Rand snarled.
I'll give you magic.
He raised a hand to the heavens, and the earth beneath their feet started to shake, bucking and pitching like a storm-tossed sea, all flowing towards Gabriel. Flung into the air, the paladin was thrown around like a ragdoll, mail clattering noisily.
Earth magic.
Ryu's eyes widened, as did most of the others.
When did he learn that? I've been helping him with it,
Dees explained, looking slightly startled herself.
He has a natural affinity for that element. He's never managed to actually cast a spell successfully before, though.
Her eyes suddenly narrowed.
Ryu. Check your dragon's tear. Now. What?
Ryu blinked, then swore as he realized her meaning.
Shit.
Pointing it at Gabriel, he nodded sharply.
It's black. I didn't want to do this.
The paladin snarled, getting back to his feet as Rand charged him again.
But now you've...
Whatever it was he was going to say was cut off by a crack of thunder, as lightning suddenly slashed the ground between them, and they both stumbled back.
Stop this madness at once.
A familiar voice rang through the air, and everybody whirled around to see Ray Braddock standing to their left, looking confused and angry.
Explain this lunacy. Ray.
Ryu blinked.
What are you doing here? Ray.
Gabriel shouted, almost as quickly.
Thanks Saint Eva. These people have been attacking me. Help me. Why, you little...
Rand growled, raising his fists again.
I said stop, both of you.
Ray yelled, and they both froze. Taking a deep breath, the paladin turned to the rest of the group, and though his voice was calm, a restrained anger was still detectable beneath it.
Ryu. What is going on here? Why is one of my trusted friends attempting to kill my younger brother? Shit,
Dees muttered under her breath.
How much do you know about this situation, Ray?
Ryu asked him bluntly, thinking quickly, no matter what he said, this wasn't looking good. If the other paladin was related to Ray, attempting to claim that he had likely been about to transform into a demon was out of the question.
The land we're standing on, I mean. I have been told that this land belonged to a Mrs. Daisy Marks, who recently converted to the Church of St. Eva, and donated it to be used for the construction of a chapel,
Ray replied calmly.
Upon receiving word of this, I was told to come here and confirm this with Gabriel, who oversaw her conversion. Was I mistaken? Mistaken?
Gabriel blurted, sounding nervous now.
That's a good word. No, you weren't mistaken, but this man is. He believes that her conversion was not genuine, that I compelled her somehow. He's mistaken. Mistaken?
Rand snarled, eyes flashing.
You carry her off in the middle of the night, forge some bullshit message from her, steal her land, and you have the balls to say I'm mistaken? I ought to ram a spool of barbed wire up your... Rand, that's enough.
Ray shouted again.
Calm down. Blind anger is not helping this situation. Hate to tell you this, Ray, but it's bullshit,
Cat growled.
We met the lady a week ago, and this bozo didn't even bother writing a message that sounded like her. If she wrote it herself, I'm a freaking Kimoto. Sorry to say that about your brother, but it's the truth. Not to mention, who converts to a different religion, signs over land to them and leaves on a pilgrimage in the middle of the night without telling anybody.
Bao added.
Just ask around. Nobody saw her leave. She just vanished. I'm a son of the church, but I can tell that this stinks on ice, Ray. Anybody can. I see.
Ray nodded slowly.
Your words have merit, and I trust your judgment. Unfortunately, I have a duty to protect my brothers in the clergy. If you insist on harming Gabriel, I will have no choice but to help him defend himself. Yes.
Gabriel exulted.
I knew you would. At the same time, you are all my friends, and I owe my life to you many times over,
Ray continued, cutting him off.
Should Gabriel continue to goad you, I will deal with that matter as well, by any means necessary. That.
Gabriel stammered.
That won't need to happen, Ray. I'll come with you quietly. Is that where you're coming down, then?
Ryu asked him quietly, as they all stared at him.
You sure about that, Ray? I'm sorry.
Ray closed his eyes.
But my first loyalty is, and always has been, to my faith. I have never pretended otherwise, and I never will. I hope you can understand, my friends.
Fat. Ran spat on the ground, glaring at him.
I should have known. You're just another worthless fanatic, just like him, just like all of them.
Ray's face paled, as if Rand had punched him, and the big farmlander continued.
Fine, take him. Take your damned Saint Eva, too, and get out of here, Braddock. You're not wanted here, not in this entire country, and neither is Saint Eva. Anybody who shows up here trying to build a chapel's gonna have one hell of a nasty welcoming committee waiting for them, and they're not gonna give a crap about what's on some land deed. I see.
Ray's eyes hardened.
I'm sorry you feel that way, Mr. Marks. We won't take up any more of your time, then. Ray,
Nina said quietly, and he glanced at her, the anger leaving his face as quickly as it had come.
Daisy is Rand's mother. Please, don't.
She left it hanging.
This.
Ray shook his head slowly, looking troubled now.
This is a very complicated situation. I think it is best if we leave now, as I said. Perhaps, soon, I will be able to shed more light on this. And then we will all be able to come to an understanding. I've got all the understanding I need already,
Rand growled. He looked like he was about to say more, but Kat had walked over to him, and was now putting a hand on his arm, just like he usually did when she was about to go berserk. Glancing down at her, he closed his eyes, and waved a hand in the air.
Go on. Go. And take your garbage with you. As you wish.
Ray nodded briefly, then snapped his fingers.
Come, Gabriel. I think it's best if we seek advice from our superiors on what to do now. Both of us. Yes, of course, Ray.
Gabriel agreed, running over to him.
Whatever you say.
The two paladins started to walk off, back towards Farmtown, but then Ray paused and turned back to look at them once more.
I will find the truth of this situation,
he said quietly, violet eyes burning.
We will meet again, someday. And I will pray to Saint Eva that this is all a simple misunderstanding. Do not raise your hand against the church again, my friends.
There were a dozen things that sprang to Ryu's tongue, but he knew none of them would help, and all of them would hurt. And so he kept his mouth shut, as did everybody else, as they watched the two paladins walk away into the distance until they were gone, leaving them alone in the field as the wind blew and the sun began to set. Despite the summer-like weather, it was going to be a cold night. Our lives are parallel.